talking to. Maintaining Simplicity, Mr. Stephen Hay.
That Elvis thing is not true, so don't come up to me and ask me to do Elvis during the party. Thanks for having me here. I love this city. It's lovely. I think people are very friendly, and you all drive like crazy people. So, with that aside, let's talk about design decisions. These are urinals, ladies. You've seen them before, but let me explain something to you about this particular setup. These are pretty close together. So if I were standing on the left one, and Bruce, for example, were standing on the right one, we'd either become very good friends, or one of us is calling the police. Okay, so someone actually thought of this. Someone consciously decided to put these things that close together. Now, I saw that. I didn't want someone coming to stand beside me, so I just kind of stood in front of both of them and just kind of went back and forth. But this is an interesting design decision. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Not urinals, but design decisions. And specifically, how can we maintain simplicity in the things that we do? And when we hear about simplicity, most of the time, people talk about taking away anything that's unnecessary. The basic premise of this talk today is that sometimes if you have to take things away that are unnecessary, it means that someone added these unnecessary things in the first place. Okay? So what if we turn that on its head? All right? So we'll be talking about that. And I think a good illustration of this whole simplicity thing is something that I like to call the UI terror loop. And the UI terror loop is something that happens, this kind of paralysis that you get when you are confronted by a user interface that has either some kind of contradiction or inconsistency, something that just kind of paralyzes you. You don't really know what happened or what you should do next. And a good example of that is this thing. This is a refund screen. This is the screen you come to when you want a refund for a particular web app. And what's the first thing that stands out on this page? Call it out for anybody. The button, right? The green button. That stands out. But does it have anything to do with getting a refund? Not at all. It says manually edit this order. So I clicked to get here to get a refund, and then the first thing I see is this button that says manually edit my order. I want a refund on my order. I don't want to edit my order. So what happens is you look at this button, and then you start looking around, because obviously we didn't read the text because no one reads on the internet. So you look at this button, and then you go to the next button, just to see if that's the button you need. Right? Back to order list. Nope, don't want to do that. I want a refund. So to refund this order, I have to follow these steps. So I guess I'm going to have to actually read text. So I have to click Initiate Refund. That's, I don't know where Initiate Refund is. I don't see it. So I have to click on Details, and then Refund Payment. So I'm reading through this thing, click on Submit. These are all instructions for the page that I'm going to get once I click on this link right here. Okay? So this is actually the main action of this little widget, but it's the one that it doesn't get your attention until the very last moment. But you're still not sure if you should click on this link. At least I wasn't. So then I go back down to that button just to make sure that it's not the right thing that I need. And I'll go back to that and I'm like, nope, I need Initiate Refund. And now, all those steps that I just read, I have to remember what they were because those are the instructions for the next page. Okay? So this could have been a lot simpler. This is a UI terror loop. I spent entirely too much time on this little component here. So here's another one of my favorites. The world's most well-known budget airline. You can probably tell who it is by looking at the refined typography and the delicate color palette. And the what? The message?
Copyright message.
The copyright message. Oh. Oops. Anyway, this is what you get. This is what you get when you filled in all the extras that you wanted. Like, I want to take these bags with me or whatever. And I didn't have any extras. So I just wanted to continue this process of booking this flight. And this is in Dutch. It's hard to read, so I'll read it for you. It says right here, after making your selection, click on Add Selected Items to continue. That's the button to add selected items. Okay? I don't have any items to add, but I have to click that button to continue. Right? This says, in English, leave the booking as it was. So they're mixing languages here. And this button says, no, don't do that. And this button says, no, thank you. So what the hell are we supposed to do at this point? Add selected items, because that's what I need to do to continue. Leave the booking as it was. That's kind of what I want to do. Don't do that. No, thank you. Don't do that. No, thank you. I don't know what to do here. Just something blows up in your head. So these are examples of things that are complicated because someone made them complicated. They could have been a lot simpler. And what happens is you paralyze people who use your product when you do this type of thing. So we have this universal goal. And anything that you do, you're in state A, you want to get to state B. Okay? Very simple. And we want to go in as straight of a line as possible. But of course, we don't do that. We web designers and developers and clients and user experience designers and what have you, we tend to Rube Goldberg things. Who's a designer here? Okay, so, all right. Who knows what Rube Goldberg is? A Rube Goldberg machine. It's like this. Okay? It's accomplishing by complex means what seemingly could be done simply. Like, for example, having a bit of soup and then wiping your mouth with a napkin. To do that, we have this intricate contraption, right? And there were lots of these kind of drawings, these Rube Goldberg drawings. And this is kind of what we tend to do on the web. And there are a lot of reasons for it that we'll be talking about. But there's a lot of stuff that happens here before you get to this very basic action, when you could have just picked up the napkin and wiped your mouth, right? So our A to B on the web usually looks something more like this. Kind of just walk around. We create this meandering path for the people who use our products. And if you look at this path, it kind of resembles the Unicode pile of poo. Okay, and this is our stamp of disapproval, the Unicode pile of poo, right? So between A and B, there are several things that we put in the middle there. One of them is processes. So conceptual processes internally within an organization, but also processes like user flows through an application or through a website. All these types of processes can put potential piles of poo between A and B for the user. The UI itself, the actual visual design, interaction design, can be between it. And technical implementation. And these things are all the results of design decisions. These are conscious decisions in most cases. Even if you don't make a conscious decision to do something, it's still part of your design. Right? So let's look at these in turn. Process first. This is an example, an older example. You go to this website on your phone, and it says you have to open this on a laptop or desktop browser, and there's a QR code that you scan with the phone that you're holding so that your phone will go to the page that you actually just typed in your phone browser. Okay? I didn't come up with this stuff. All right? Stamp of disapproval. Here's another one. I'm on my phone again, but I get to choose the PC experience, the tablet experience, or the on-the-go experience, because we all know we're on the go when we're using our phones, right? So this is an old example too, but it's the kind of thing that someone comes up with without really thinking about what this means. So I hope no one here made this. There are some processes that have to be complex, like two-step verification, which is actually effective because it's complex. Okay, so I'm not saying all processes should be simple, but in most cases they should be. But this is the airport that I fly out of. I live in the Netherlands, Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam. And I need to park my car when I go to places like this. And I didn't park my car this time. I actually took the train into Amsterdam. And one of the reasons why is this thing. What you choose, these 3 blocks in the middle, the left-hand one says, I'm going on vacation. So this whole page is about parking your car. The left-hand block says, going on vacation, and there are these 2 little blocks underneath. The left-hand one says, I'm going shorter than 2 days, less than 2 days, and the other one says I'm going longer than 2 days. And then you have the business block in the middle, and then again, fewer than 2 days or longer than 2 days. So at this point, I'm wondering, what's the difference? You know, I just want to park my car. Why does where I'm going have anything to do at all with parking my car? So I'm thinking maybe if I say it's business, it's going to be more expensive. So I first just clicked on vacation. And they have all these parking products on the left-hand side. And remember, we just want to park our car, okay? So they have smart parking, park and travel, holiday valet parking, business parking, valet parking, because that's different than holiday valet parking, excellence parking, short stop parking, visitors parking, excellence parking, picking people up and taking them away, and premium parking. I have no idea what these things are, so I have to click through all of them to be able to compare. There's no comparison widget or whatever, so you just have to pick a product and hope for the best. Okay? And in my case, to come here, the only product that was available was the one that cost 160 euros to park your car for 4 days. So, nope, not going to do that. So this is really complicated. And this part of the process, where you actually go to payment, is not complicated at all. It's a really straightforward, clear process. It's really clear what's happening throughout. So why is there such a difference between the front section and this like checkout section? Probably because there are 2 different systems that were put together, and no person thought, let's look at the consistency of this whole thing and see if it's easy to use from beginning to end. Okay? So someone had obviously thought about this module or system for checkout, and the same type of simplistic thinking did not happen when choosing all these products and how to represent them on the screen. So here's another one. This is an international train site. I had filled in all my information. I said when I wanted to go on the train, filled out a form. It told me what the price would be, and then I clicked on, purchase the order, make the reservation, and then I get this, which is hard to read for you, but it says, we're checking the availability of the thing that you want to do. So I thought it was already available, but now they're checking the availability. So I'm all nervous because this is one of those little, pop-ups, and you get this little thing turning around it, that spinning wheel thing. So I'm like, oh no, what's going to happen? So this is not simple. You enter everything. I filled out the entire form, name, address, the whole bit. And then you check the availability. That makes no sense. And now I'm pretty nervous about whether or not I'm going to get this thing or not. So what they could have done is this. Enter the date and the destination. That's it. Just 2 simple things. See if there's availability. And then continue and fill out the rest of the form if it's available. Simple, right? But a lot of websites, a lot of applications are not built this way. Why? There are a lot of reasons for it. We'll talk about some of them in just a little bit. Okay. So, user interfaces. Again, going back to the parking at Schiphol Airport. They're a good airport. But this thing. Someone decided, you know what, we need people to enter a date, so we're going to use drop-downs. Okay? And just because when you have JavaScript, we'll have this little calendar widget in between the date and the time. And generally, the time doesn't even really matter. So are drop-downs the best type of UI widget to use to enter this data? Probably not. Probably this is just a result of the technological choice, the system that's being used, and people didn't really think enough to change this. So this kind of thing is a problem. It's infinitely harder. We have a lot of programming knowledge. That developers are very clever nowadays. It's not beyond the realm of possibility to just have an input field that either has a widget when it's available or allows you to just type in a date, and then will be intelligent enough to see what you mean by typing in that date, and just, that should be enough. But people are like, well, we want them to fill in the date in a certain way. So what developers often do is they offload a lot of the responsibility for getting proper input to the person using the software. That's not really fair when we know a lot about this technology and we're in a position to be able to make something that's really easy to use. Okay? So again here, if you look at the top, you can't read it, it's in Dutch. There's an arrival date and time and a departure date and time. And then there's a link to change those if you want. So when you click on the change, you actually go to this separate widget that allows you to change this interface or change the input. When you could actually just have that be the input field and just change it on the fly. So these are little things that would make it easier. You don't have to go to a separate component, separate widget or page to change things. So just simple things like that. And sometimes we come across things that are a little bit deceptive. Like here, it looks like it says I'm looking for, and it says view all. Looks like you can just type in whatever you want. So that's good. I can search for anything I want on this website, right? But it's not a search, it's a drop down. And they made it look like search. Because we want search, that's all the way up here. Okay. So you can represent things. If there's a drop down, you can represent that as a drop down because that gives a clue to the person using this that they know that there's a selection of choices available. And that's not the same thing as being able to type something in. You actually can't type anything in where view all is. You can't type anything there at all. Okay. And then finally, technology. This is another thing with that international train. Please wait while we process your request. Do not open a new browser window or a browser tab during or immediately after payment. Do not use the browser buttons back, home, and refresh. Do not close the browser during payment process. At this point, you're just basically shitting your pants, hoping it's going to go well. Okay, this is scary stuff. You know, we're again offloading our technological limitations to the user. We're just making them pay for the fact that we didn't design this well enough. Okay, we have the same thing with older browsers. Somehow we trained our clients that everything should look and work exactly the same everywhere for many years, and luckily that's changing. But if something doesn't work in a particular browser, that's not a browser problem, that's a design problem. It means that you didn't consider the differences between these browsers, or you created client expectations, or we did as an industry, that we can't fulfill. Okay. This is one of my favorite examples, my bank. I wanted to transfer some money, and I pressed a button. Didn't look like this, but it had the same effect. It was a button, but it was not a button. It was actually a link, and it was made to look like a button, and then it links to nowhere, and it's JavaScript and click dependent. So, what happened was, how many of you, when you're filling in a form, you actually just tab through the form, you use the keyboard? Anyone like that? Am I the only one? Okay, quite a few, good. So, I fill something in, I tab to the next field, tab, 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 and you get to the bottom of the form, everything's filled in, and I press enter, which for a normal submit element, right, a submit button, that would actually send the form. But not this one, because it's not really an HTML button. Okay? And somehow it was scripted in such a way that the enter didn't count as a click, but it did screw up the JavaScript which made it so that after I had pressed enter, I couldn't even click on it. Okay? So now, I'm wondering, did it work? Did it not work? Did I transfer the money? Did I not transfer the money? What's going on? And it could have been so simple. So look at what they did to create this thing. They made a link, they styled it to look like a button, they added JavaScript to make it act like a button, and then they reduced it their own complexity by not testing. Okay? And they could have done this. They could have just made a button with the button element and styled it to make it look like what they want it to look like. And why they didn't do it, well, there are any number of reasons, but I suspect it had to do with they want to track things, and they were able to track things better with a link, with the particular software they were using to track than with a button. Okay? Another example is a breakpoint. I'm sure most of you are familiar with breakpoints, media queries within responsive design. So we have, hopefully you can see this, we have an article on the left-hand side, takes up 60% of the width. And then we have an aside, a sidebar on the right-hand side, takes up 40% of the width. And then we say, up to 900 pixels, we want those things to be 100% wide, just as wide as the screen. Okay? But this is kind of weird, right? Gets our stamp of disapproval. Because they styled article inside as columns, and then they used a media query to undo what they just did. Okay, and they could have done this. Because knowing that every block level element is already 100%, you could just say, using min width, as soon as this thing gets to 900 pixels, these things are no longer 100%, but now they're 60 and 40%. Okay, so this is a simpler way to do it, which is also easier to maintain, and it's kind of mobile first. So again, processes, the UI, and technical implementation. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about simple. There's a difference between simple and simple looking. And this is a huge thing because especially with a lot of the newer products that we have now, Apple's got some beautiful looking things. They look very simple. They're not always as simple as they look, as many of us know from experience. But we always get this lofty idea that if something appears simple, that that's the way it is. Like this type of thing, you know. How to draw an owl. Draw some circles, draw the rest of the owl. Right? I used to buy these books thinking, oh, I'm going to learn how to draw. You know, and I'm like, what? How am I supposed to deal with this? So this is kind of what we do to our users as well. We're like, hey, there's this simple looking thing, and then you jump in and you're like, oh my God. I think it was one of the earlier iPads. I didn't know that you had to press the button, the one button that's on the thing, twice to like pop up this little thing that allows you to close applications. I didn't know that. So it looks simple. It's got one button. How hard could it be? But yeah, you got to know. You press it. Oh yeah, you press the button twice. Well, how do you know that? Yeah, I read it on some forum on the internet. So that's not as simple as it looks, is it? We're trying to make things look simple, but in fact they're not quite as simple. This thing, my friend Brad Frost, you can't really see it. You can't even see my pointer, but above those numbers, the 1, 2, 3, that's a place that you can paste a telephone number. Okay, but it's just empty space, so we have no idea that that's a thing. You just kind of have to know that, right? Calculators. Who's used them? Do you remember the actual calculators, like physical calculators? Anyone have one of those still? Okay, calculators look simple, right? So this is interesting. How many of you have ever clicked clear? You tapped clear, like a bunch of times. You know, here, I want to get back to 0, so it's clear, 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 clear. Right? Why is that? So the question here on user experience Stack Exchange is, what makes them trust the other buttons more than the clear button? You know, why can we trust the 1 or the 2 or the 4, but we can't trust clear? And we know why it is. It's because you have clear, which clears the last portion of the formula. You have all clear, which clears everything that you've entered, right? So it's not always clear on every single calculator. Not always clear, but so even something like a simple calculator can be a little bit more complex than it looks. This type of thing, the hamburger menu, the hamburger symbol. People thought for a long time it was ubiquitous because developers and designers, we work in our bubble and we see other people doing it, so we think everybody knows what that means. And now people are starting to know what it means generally, but you never really know what it means until you click on it and find out. Because some people put the menu in there and some people put a bunch of other shit in there, and we don't really know until we click on it. So it's kind of like open door number 2, just see what's in there. But if you put the word menu, that's unambiguous. Everybody knows what that means, right? It doesn't look quite as nice. We can't turn our entire UI into just this conglomeration of symbols, which I think is a disturbing trend anyway, because icons don't communicate that well, generally. Okay? So a combination of menu with a symbol, that's fine. But the assumption that we can simplify things, make them look simple just by having 3 lines and have everybody know what it is, that is a dangerous assumption. Okay? And we make all these little assumptions. One assumption is not too bad, but when you have like 20 of these different assumptions happening within the same interface, it becomes a serious problem. Simple also doesn't mean stupid. Okay, complex doesn't mean smart either. So we don't need to Fisher-Price our designs. I don't know if you have Fisher-Price here, the children's toys. We don't need to make things look like children's toys. Personally, one of the things that I find not an improvement in the Mac OS interface is the fact that things seem to be becoming more simple looking. But they're harder for me. I have to relearn a lot of things every single time. I've used Apple products since I was a teenager. So why do I have to keep relearning these things? Even when they're made simpler, right? End quote. So we don't need to make things simple looking, okay? And we also don't need to make less of a product by removing essential content. So if you know about minimalism, then you know that minimalism doesn't mean taking as much as possible away. It means stripping something down to the essential, okay? It doesn't mean taking the essential out, which is what a lot of people do. So this is a web agency. I'm not picking on them in particular. It's just a perfect example of this kind of trend we've been seeing in visual design. We've got this kind of minimal interface, just a color with a picture of a phone, and we make interfaces. That's all you need to know. We make interfaces. We just brought it down to the core, man. That's all we do. We make interfaces. But it doesn't tell you anything. They think that it's getting to the core. It doesn't tell you anything. And this is a company that has done great work for products like Slack, which is a pretty good product. So it's kind of surprising that they would do this. Imagine if other companies would do this. And look down here, it says continue on to find out, all the stuff that you would have rather seen right away. But what if Ferrari did the same thing? We make cars. This is not an actual page, by the way. But it's kind of like the Flash intros of many years ago, Something that doesn't really tell you anything, that gives you a certain feeling or has some kind of design aesthetic, and then you get onto the meat of stuff. So this would make no sense whatsoever, but people do it all the time. And why are they doing it? Because other people are doing it. Okay. So how does complexity happen? Sometimes it happens by adding to something simple, but most often it happens by starting with too much. So John Maeda, who was a former president of the Rhode Island School of Design and author of The Laws of Simplicity, it's a great little book. You can find it online as well. He said in law number 1 was the simplest way to achieve simplicity is through thoughtful reduction. And this is that thing I mentioned at the beginning. So you're starting with this big slab of stone, and you start chiseling away to make your sculpture, right? But if you don't have it, you don't have to remove it. So I like looking at things more like additive sculpture. You start with nothing, and then you start like a clay sculpture. You start adding bits of clay, and you start forming it into the thing that you want. And then there's a possibility that you'll avoid a lot of these problems of having things be too complex, because you didn't start with a bunch of stuff that you didn't realize how complex that whole bunch of stuff is. So the reason, and this is, lots of people show the world's first web page as an example, but they do because it's a great example. Nothing was put into this page that can break it, so it works literally everywhere. It works now. I know that Tim Berners-Lee was not thinking, oh, this is going to work on the iPad later. You know, when they come up with an iPad, it's going to work. It doesn't look very pretty, but that's something we can handle with progressive enhancement. We can allow the environment that the user views this in to be able to present this information in a way that makes sense for that device and that browser and that person. Okay? But it will work everywhere. That's the nature of progressive enhancement. There's this idea, this concept in accounting, financial accounting, called zero-based budgeting. If you've ever worked for a government organization, I don't know how it is here, but they kind of make budgets based on what you spent last year. So in the Netherlands, toward the end of the year, everybody's doing road construction because they want to get the same budget that they did last year. So we have to use up the budget so we can say, yeah, we used it all. Because if we don't use it all, we won't get that same amount next year. We're only going to get the amount that we use. And zero-based budgeting says, no, we're going to look at what you need, right? So you're going to set the budget to zero, and then we're going to look at what you need, and then we're going to give you a budget based on that, right? So you start with zero and add the budget. You ignore what happened in the past. Okay? And this was a really important concept to me as far as design. My consultancy is called Zero Interface, and the Zero Interface is a concept that I've been talking about for the past 11 or 12 years or so. And it's basically zero-based budgeting for design. You require the user experience to be designed starting from nothing, and you ignore design baggage. Design baggage is the stuff that we and our clients add to the project without carefully thinking about, does this support our universal goal of A to B? So here are some wonderful examples. Refusal to understand or accept sunk costs. Sunk costs, for those of you who are unfamiliar, is you've spent the money. Let's say you spent money to buy a ticket for a concert. That money is gone. Whether you go or whether you don't go, whether you get sick or not, that money's gone anyway. So it doesn't really matter. You don't have to do the thing just because you already spent the money. It's gone, right? That's a sunk cost. Clients have trouble accepting sunk costs. We paid for that CMS, therefore we're going to use it. Our developers used Woo tools on that project, therefore we're going to continue using it. Right? So it doesn't only have to do with financial costs, but also effort. Competitor patterns. My competitor's doing the same thing. You know? So I've had many clients, and I'm sure you have as well, who point to their competitors as an example of something that they wish to do. Why someone would want to do exactly what their competitor does is beyond me. That's not very good marketing generally. But competitor patterns are very compelling to clients. And carousels. My son, he's 16, he's studying design, and my oldest son, and he was at school for 2 days, came home, he had a complete website. Don't ask me how he did it. They have, I don't know, Dreamweaver or something. It made me doubt, you know, should I be using something like Dreamweaver to do websites instead of just writing code? But he came home, he had this complete website. It had like interactive photo gallery and carousel in there. We hadn't had the carousel talk yet. Right? You know, with your kids, if any of you have kids, you have basically 3 talks at different points in their lives. The first one is respect yourself and respect other people. The second one is have safe sex. And the third one is never use a carousel. So we haven't had that talk yet. We designers and developers also have a lot of baggage, like trends, flat design, non-flat design, pattern libraries, Bootstrap, Zurb Foundation, these kind of frameworks, tons and tons of frameworks because we love our toys, and conventional wisdom. You know, so-and-so does it that way, so therefore, because he's a demigod, we should do it that way, right? Just ignore this stuff, okay? This is what happened to CSS, for example. We used to write CSS. It was pretty easy to grasp. CSS is like a game of chess. It's pretty easy to learn the basics. It can be pretty difficult to learn enough that you're like a master of CSS. And I don't think anyone can be nowadays. You tend to specialize in certain parts. It used to be you write some CSS, but now you want to, auto prefixer for vendor prefixes, Sass, Suzy for layout. You want to minify that CSS. We need to put that in a grunt task because we don't want to do it by hand, so we have to download NPM and Node. If they use Bundler for version control, Yeoman because we don't want to do this every project, Bower because we hate downloading stuff by hand, and then we have to document all this stuff, right? And now we've written our 2 lines of CSS, and we've created this huge amount of dependencies and complexity just because that's the way we do it on every project, and because that's what the famous people say that you should do, right? Without looking at what's our goal, what's A to B, what's appropriate for our project, because it seems easier to just take some setup that you've made for project A and apply that same thing to every single project because you have less work setting it up. But maintainability is another thing altogether, which I'm sure many of you know. We've had to deal with this thing, and Sass doesn't work with Suzy because you don't have the right version of Sass, and then you're like, oh, well, someone's like, oh, use Bundler, and then you're like, what's Bundler? So you go to the website, and it's like, just do gem install Bundler, and then you're done, and that doesn't work, so, you just, throw yourself over a bridge, and then you're done. So the problem with all of this baggage is that all of it is focused on existing solutions, right? Look at our competitors. Give me one of those. Look at what the Bootstrap people are doing. Let's do that. We saw someone say you should use Yeoman for all your projects. This kind of thing. I'm not down on frameworks. I'm not down on preprocessors, post-processors, libraries, or anything like that. They're made by really clever people, and they solve very difficult problems. But those problems are not necessarily your problems for that particular project. So when we just use these things all across the board because they're easy to use, and we don't have to think as much as designers and developers, that's when we can run into problems later on. This kind of thing. I don't remember people doing these things. They call them a jumbotron, all right? But I don't remember people doing these things before some of these frameworks came out. Now everyone does them. Why? Because it's in the framework. Because everyone has it. Very good. There are probably several of those types of reasons. So, is that the right reason? Are those the right reasons to use it? Because everyone has it. Or because it's in the framework and it's easy to do. This kind of thing as well. These conventions. Conventions are good. Material design. Google did a great job on it. Does it mean that it's perfect and applicable to every single project that you do on a phone? No. Are there problems with it? There are some. Right? Depends on what you're doing. So I think that when we stop focusing on existing solutions, when we start focusing more on problems, that we're going to come up with different solutions that are more suited to the task at hand. I often say it to my clients, I don't want to hear about solutions. clients tend to come to you with solutions to problems that they haven't really stated clearly. You know, we want a carousel. We want this. Well, wait a minute. I don't want to hear about that. Those are solutions. Tell me the problem. I want to talk about problems. I'm all about problems. Okay? It sounds negative, but it's not. Okay? So how can we achieve simplicity? I think the answer is very simple. Start with nothing. Right? The Navy SEALs in the United States, they have this period of time during their basic training to become a Navy SEAL called Hell Week. And the whole idea is to separate out the people who can't handle the stress, both physically and mentally, of just pushing yourself to the absolute limit. So they have a shit spell in San Diego, California. And any time of the day or night during this training, you could go and ring that bell, and it means that you've given up. Okay? So that person just didn't make the cut because they just can't handle it. They're not fit for this particular thing. Doesn't mean they're bad people. Doesn't mean they're wimps or anything like that. It just means they couldn't handle this. They weren't suited for this. If you put everything you do, content, design decisions, design elements, frameworks, libraries, widgets, components, anything you add to the thing that you're building, if you put it through Hell Week first, see if it makes the cut. And then, if it does, you leave it in. You're constantly testing against A to B. Then, you have the possibility to come up with an elegant and simple interface that's simple looking and also very simple to use. Every step you add is one too many by default. Okay. So, just once you do that step, you repeat it, and you stop as soon as you can. The one thing that I find that helps in my work is asking myself, what's the most important thing? If I start with nothing, and I want to say be able to book a flight to Romania, for example, what one thing would I absolutely need to do? And I know it's not only one thing, but if I could only put one thing in there, just as a thinking exercise, what one thing would that be? And then I ask that question again, and again, and again, and I stop as soon as it's possible to stop, and then add nothing other than that. And it sounds really simple, and I know that it's not possible to do this in most of your projects. You're not in the luxurious position to start from nothing. Okay, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. So the zero interface is this idea that if I can think about something, it's done. I want to book this flight, it's done. I want to order a book online, it's done. I think about it and it's done. That's this utopian idea. It's not possible, at least not today. So what are the fewest amount of steps that I can put in there to reach A to B? And that is as close to the zero interface as you can get. And that type of thinking, just thinking that way, can help you. Even though it won't be perfect, you'll avoid a lot of the problems that you would have if you started with a bunch of stuff and tried to take things out. Okay, so this is one of the things that I think comes pretty close, is Amazon's one-click. It comes pretty close. I want this book, well, I don't want this book. I wrote this book, so I don't need it. I definitely don't want to buy my own book. But you could just click on one click and you buy a book. Now, the problem is, when we start creating processes that are this simple, there are some things we have to worry about, because you can get too simple, right? Like, I was curious, what would happen if I click the one-click button? Because I had forgotten, I haven't used it in a while. And putting together this talk, I was thinking, what happens there, when you click that? Is the book immediately bought or not? Some of you might know the answer to this. So you have to be aware of too easy. You have to put on the brakes for people like me who just, click stuff, right? And don't get creepy at the same time. So let people decide when they want to do something. So it turns out that when you click one click, you don't get that. You don't get this thing that says, "Are you sure you want to buy the book?" You don't get that. It just purchases the book, and you do have the opportunity to undo that purchase, which is very smart from a business perspective. But you know, if you don't know what's going to happen, like in this case, I bought the book Getting Things Done by David Allen without really expecting to buy it. And I'm like, oh, okay, it's a pretty good book. So I kept it, but give people a chance to avoid mistakes. Okay? But it's also easier to build this stuff in when you started from zero and worked your way up. Okay? B.J. Fogg, who wrote a fantastic book called Persuasive Technology, and I encourage you all to look at this website, behaviormodel.org. You'll see a graph on there which has this correlation between ability and simplicity. The more complex something is, the less able users are to deal with it. And the simpler something is, the more able users are to deal with it. So you actually create better users by making things simple. Okay? This kind of all sounds like progressive enhancement. Starting simple and building on top, enhancing, and really that's all that it is. And a lot of people don't like this approach. People like their design baggage. We love our tools. We think they're cool. We like to play. You know, I'm guilty of it. Everybody's guilty of it. And we're kind of reluctant to change. Grace Hopper said humans are allergic to change, and they always say we've always done it this way. It's just the way we do things. Okay, but sometimes you can get great results when you rid yourself of design baggage and just start over. And I know it's not possible to start over completely with everything you build, but if you use that as a thinking exercise and just ask yourself, what if I were able to start over? Would I have made the same choices that I make now? Are there choices that I would have made differently that I can still apply to what I'm doing right now? And that might help you to make something a lot simpler and easy to use and fun to use. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Stephen? Show us your hand if there are. One of the things I wanted to know, because you used gave an example from Amazon, but at the beginning of the talk I was thinking some of the biggest websites, some of the most successful websites like Amazon and eBay, don't scream simplicity to me. Sometimes the design is the busiest thing on the internet. Are they doing it wrong? Do they know something we don't know?
Yeah, well, they know that simplicity allows you to get from A to B as quickly as possible. I don't believe that that's their goals. They're smart enough to know. They're doing the things they're doing on purpose, and they've tested them, and it's getting the results that they want. So, obviously, I'm talking about simplicity, and in the sense that I want the best for the people using these products. Companies want the best for making money. And that's not necessarily making something simple. Sometimes it's making something hard on purpose, like, for example, parking at an airport. So if you do that, there's a higher chance that people are going to browse through more things, maybe buy more things. That's part of the design. So they design complexity on purpose.
Okay, so their complexity was nevertheless the simplest they could make their business model live with.
Yeah, I think there's a balance. I think that you can make something easy to use and still make money. You know, it doesn't have to be hard. But Amazon they do extensive testing, obviously, on everything they do. So everything they've done is carefully chosen. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Stephen Hay, ladies and gentlemen.